Well, also, what do you think about some of these things I'm saying?
You know, I'm certainly from a very different angle. I'm so aware of how much more egocentric people have become, how much more bothered they are by having to conform to group expectations, whatever the group happens to be. I think we're seeing groups splintering more and more. Why we're seeing the kind of polarities that we're seeing in our society and in other societies too. You know, both of us travel the world a lot, and we see how this works in other cultures. And I'm just very aware that with the number of people living alone, the number of people who go through life thinking this is all about me, even how it plays out in things like Facebook, you have people who are constantly putting entries into their Facebook about where they're going and what they're doing. I'm going grocery shopping now, I'll be gone for the next hour. Like, this is some big revelation that everybody's supposed to be deeply interested in. And it's that paradox I was talking about of isolation on one hand and the desire for connection on another. So that's one thing that I find myself reacting to. And then the other is, I'm not as sure as you seem to be that it is as much of a human need to introspect and to be psychologically oriented. I think that a lot of what we see is that there are many people who go through life without ever examining themselves, examining their motives, analyzing their own reactions to things or feelings about things. Some people who are just paper thin.
Well, there's hardly anything that's natural that doesn't have its drawbacks. A lot of people have very bad sex, but we don't think that they don't have sex. There's nobody who doesn't look inward.
Really?
Nobody.
Really?
Because it's a basic sensory motor operation. We are geared to examine ourselves. There's a natural split between the observer and the observed. Now, that doesn't mean that people doing it might not overdo one or the other, or that they might not get enough satisfaction out of it. There's no people, it's natural to eat, and some people eat very badly. So, but natural it is. And the problem is how to be able to help people to do it the best way that it can be done. And what I'm proposing is that if you get a particular format in which people are helped to be able to present what they want to present, suppose, for example, we have the concept of gratitude, and people talk to each other about how they experience gratitude in their lives. One person says, I never express gratitude, I expect people to know when I'm grateful. Nobody ever tells me they're grateful to me, and I know they are. Why would anybody have to say it? Well, okay, then there are others who are expressing gratitude all the time. So whether something is natural or not doesn't mean that everybody's going to do it in the same way. But if you have it done in a community, people have an opportunity to see that we're all interested in gratitude, and many of us have different ways of expressing it, and many of us have different satisfactions and different frustrations with it. Some people will say, I'm never recognized anywhere. I do all these good things, I never hear a word about it. Well, they would have a chance to say that among other folks and say, who would respond with their experiences, and you get a broad section, cross-section of what people at large do in handling the issue of gratitude. Well, there are 1,000 themes that are relevant to people's lives,
Fundamental to the way
and
they live.
everybody cares about them more or less, better or worse, choppily or uniformly.
So let me ask you a big hypothetical question.
Right.
Let's say you had unlimited money, unlimited resources.
I don't.
Human resources, technological resources, physical space, you had everything. What kind of a community would you create? What kind of community would you create for yourself that you would really want to be a part of?
Well, when you put it that way, you're introducing a lot of different kinds of communities. Like, my neighborhood is a community.
Sure,
I'm not talking about my
I
neighborhood.
know.
My country is a community. I'm not talking about my country.
Right.
I'm talking about a fairly narrow but broader than common grouping of people who come together because they want to and do it over an extended period of time and develop whatever they need to, but they're doing it outside of what we think of as a normal community. It's almost like a Sabbath from the community. So I have my community, but I have this place to go where everything goes on in the community can be transported into there, but not replacing it. It's a separate place to examine, a special place to make up for the things that in our everyday pressures of life we cannot take care of all by ourselves. It's just too much.
Okay. So,
So I don't know if that answers your question.
it doesn't.
Well, try me again.
Okay, so you have unlimited resources to create any kind of a community you want. I'm curious what its life focus would be. I'm curious
Yeah,
what
that-
size it would be. I'm curious about how it would be structured, how the morality would be enforced. I'm curious about
Well,
what the responsibilities would be of somebody who decides to become a member of that community.
Well, the first thing I have to emphasize is that I'm not talking about creating a new city or a new neighborhood or a
Right.
new country.
Mhm.
I'm talking about a way of getting out of the community you're in temporarily to make up for what you can't get in that community. So there are all kinds of things I would do, let's say politically, if I were a politically minded person, in the community at large. That doesn't really apply in this community. It's a separate place, almost like a haven or a harbor or an opportunity, a new vista, a refreshment, a way of adding to what our lives may be not getting in the irrepressible sequence of life's events. Now, if you ask me how would I do
specifically-
that?
And specifically, you mean emotionally, psychologically?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But it wouldn't be a place where I would have educational systems, although I could imagine something like that could develop, but it's not what I'm talking about now. So, when you ask me how many people would be in it, well, it could be 100 people, it could be a couple hundred, it could be an internet community. Now, if you take somebody like Martin Seligman is actually doing that now, where he has an internet connection where people relate to his organization with questions about psychological matters that they're concerned about. And I don't know the details of exactly how they handle all of those questions, but he has a tremendous following, and I think he's operating in a totally foresightful direction in terms of transposing psychotherapy from a private, medically oriented event toward an event that matters in people's everyday lives.
For those who
So
are
it could be
interested, the website that Erv is talking about is called AuthenticHappiness.org, and it's where people who are interested in positive psychology can go to get both personal help as well as become part of a positive psychology community.
Yeah. Well, technologically,
Mhm.
you would have the problem of how these people would relate to each other instead of relating to the authority, which in a group that I'm proposing, where people are literally together, they can join together and talk to each other, not only to the authority.